Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's episode of the Freedom Series with George Markoski, where we're going to deep dive into understanding more around property, wealth creation strategies, and creating a life of more fun, more freedom, and more fulfillment. George, how are you doing tonight?
Hey, really good, thanks. Thanks so much for having me here on your podcast. I'm very excited.
Mate, grateful to have you here. And for any of you guys that are joining us live, my team are across the platforms in the comments section. So please, throughout tonight's conversation, put in any questions or comments you've got. They'll feed them back to us. We can get them answered for you as well. Show us a bit of love and support. Hit the love or the like button. Let us know you're watching. And we'll do our best to get you guys some amazing answers to your questions tonight. So, George, how long ago did you buy your first property? Let's start there.
Okay, I bought my first property actually when I was 27.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, I started late.
Late bloomer.
Yeah, late bloomer. Look, I knew that I wanted to buy property from a young age. So what happened was when I was about 16, I entered a lottery to win a Commodore, one of those Commodores worth 60 grand back in those days.
Right.
I thought if I get this Commodore, I'm selling it and buying two houses because houses in those days were 30 grand, right? So I was always thinking property, but I got waylaid along the way, traveled around, had a lot of fun, but finally I bought my first property, and that was actually in Adelaide, in an old suburb. When I first bought it, I was actually in the middle of running an event, so I bought it at an auction, and I'm running an event, I've locked the door, I'm bidding, people are knocking the door, and I'm like, oh shit, what's happening here? It was pretty crazy. And the funny thing is, after I bought it, I wasn't sure if I was happy or sad. See,
Okay. Tell me more.
because I won it. Did I pay too much? Is it the right property? What am I doing? You know what I mean? It's one of those questions,
Second guess yourself.
So, I had a bit of buyer's remorse. I was a bit happy. I didn't know what to do. I was sort of confused. But when I woke up the next day, I thought, you know what? I bought a property. That's it. I'm in.
Okay. 27 years old, so a fairly late-ish bloomer to the party. And you then went on to, like, how many years did it take you to move to a position where you're financially free through the income you're making from those properties?
Well, what happened was when I first started investing in property investments, back in those days, negative gearing was popular.
Yeah.
Still popular today, but not with me and our group. And what happened was I was negative gearing, so I'd buy one house, there's minus 300, buy another house, there's minus 250. Before you know it, 7 days a week, I'm just working my ass off.
Yeah.
And, property, I knew property was the answer, but it didn't look like it at the time. And I was like, wow, I'm actually working harder, not less, because property was supposed to give me more freedom. And I tried flipping, I tried renovating, I tried lots of different things. There's a difference. I'm going to go back to this in a second between making money through labor and making money through capital, which is a very important distinction. But what I did is I thought, this is not really helping. I'm not actually doing any better. I'm working longer hours. So I had two doors. One door was give up property, and the other door was really work it out. And luckily I chose door number two.
Right.
And I called that my $1 million decision because the first decision I made was really work this out and find out about property.
Yeah.
Because quitting wasn't an option because I came from a family that struggled to make ends meet. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I wasn't going to inherit a fortune.
Yeah.
And I had no other option. That's part of the reason I had to do property because I knew 90% of people that became millionaires in the world did it through property. So I wanted to have this odd stack to my favor. And second thing I did is I ignored everyone else out there giving real estate advice because they were super spammy. They didn't have the runs on the board, and they were trying to sell stuff instead of actually teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
Third thing I do is found mentors that had real life results. People who are actually living the lifestyle I wanted to live because there's no point in someone saying, hey, be like me, and they're working 100 hours a week. I wanted to see people that were actually living off property and relaxing and having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a really important distinction you mentioned before too that I see relates not just with property but business and life in general. And that was the decision, the $1 million decision you made, that you're going to work it out at any cost. Whether that meant losing money, whether that meant spending money, whether that meant, investing money in mentors or whatever else. You made a decision that, like I'm all in on this and I'm going to work it out. 27 years old, maybe, I don't know, back then people weren't necessarily thinking about building a property empire. Many people.
They weren't. No, people used to buy one and that didn't stop because there's your $300 gone a week, which in those days was half your salary. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah. And so tell me, how did that eventuate then to go from like I'm gonna work it out to where you're at now, which to kind of fast forward, you got to a position, and to kind of spoiler alert, you got to a position where your property created passive income. You're financially free, didn't have to get out of bed, didn't have to work. It's got a beautiful property for yourself and so forth, and live an amazing lifestyle. But then obviously to the position of like, oh, now I want to give back, and I want to help other people fast track the journey that I had. Like, where did that start for you? Because like you're now a mentor to many. I know that a lot of our clients have used your services. I've certainly been involved for a while now as well, and the experience has been phenomenal in terms of the properties we purchased, the positive gearing, the capital growth, and so forth. But where was the first kind of step up for you, or the hand up for you in that process? Like you made the decision. You talked about getting mentors. What happened after that?
Okay. After I retired or before I retired?
Before, let's start at the
Before.
beginning.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Before I retired. So what I did is I went around looking for people that were successful in property, and decided to model what they did. And I found some people really good at paying off their mortgage quicker. Other people really good at finding depreciation and getting the things done. So I didn't invent anything that I do. All I did is I thought, okay, this guy's doing this, great stuff. I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that, I'm going to take that. And I created a model and just using, because even one of these things alone was working really well.
Yeah,
But putting them together was just supercharged.
yeah,
And using that within a few short years, I retired. Because what
yeah,
I did is restructured my loans. I mean, a lot of times what happens is a lot of people got their loans wrong. We recently had a member join our program about 2 months ago. And the first month, we've changed them and saved them $58,000 a year
yeah,
just in expenses. Now, that's almost like getting a second job and a high
yeah,
paying one at that.
yeah,
So, so once I used a few of these strategies, I changed things around and it really boosted everything. And
yeah,
because I'd been doing property for a while, I didn't start from scratch. So I did it a few short years, but I had the 7 years beforehand of having property as well, working hard. So I was
yeah,
an overnight success after 10 years of hard work.
yeah. Which is typical. It's just not often what people show on their highlight reels through social, and and it's interesting because I remember we had a distinct conversation as well. Like I can speak from my own experience, but we had a conversation. There was one small tweak that you shared with me around structuring loans that was a huge. It was a game changer, and I was like, "Holy shit! Why has no one ever shared that with me before?" It's something so simple, but it makes logical sense. But it's not just not the way that we're trained to think as well. I got some questions coming in here as well. And guys, if you're watching, welcome to this evening's Freedom Series podcast. We're speaking all things investments, property with George Markoski. William from Sydney, what are the main mistakes that new hot to trot investors often make when dealing with property?
Good question. Well,
Great question.
great question. See, this is the one thing I've got to say about investing. Property investing is not the best investment. There you go. I've said it.
I'm waiting for it.
Okay. The number one investment you can make is in yourself. And it always will be you, because you need to really educate yourself. And the big problem is people, instead of investing in themselves first, invest in property first, which is wrong.
Yeah, yeah,
Because the biggest return you're ever going to get is investing in yourself.
yeah.
And I really believe you've got to invest in yourself, invest in your education. And that's the first step of getting there. Because without that, you're really floundering around and not being an expert. And you shouldn't do that. You know what I mean?
And that's an investment you've got for the rest of your life. And this is what I often say to people, and what I share in my book as well. It's like, if you can build one business that can be profitable, have some form of purpose behind it, and work without you, once you go through that initiation, let's call it initiation, right?
Yep.
Get punched in the face a few times and get knocked down and get back up. You can do it again and again and again and again across multiple businesses, because you've gone through and you've mastered the steps, and more importantly, the psychological switches that you have to make to be there. It's the same with you. It's like, if you're to go bankrupt today, for argument's sake, you can get back to where you are a lot quicker than having never got there in the first place.
Absolutely, of course, because you got the ability. Well, they reckon if they distributed the money around the world, that it wouldn't take long before it ended up in the hands of the few again. You know what I mean? If we redistributed wealth,
Yeah,
because because there's the rich mentality and the poor mentality, and the poor mentality is you get money, you spend it on
yeah,
stuff, And the
Yeah,
rich,
live paycheck to paycheck,
right,
week
and
to week.
yeah, exactly. And then you've got the mentality of the rich, where when you get money, you invest it. You invest it in yourself, you invest it in education, in mentors, in your health, in fitness, in your life.
Which requires you to put aside those short-term gratification, right?
It's like the marshmallow test.
That's exactly like the marshmallow test. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Do you want to tell
Um,
everyone about the marshmallow test?
what's that?
Do you want to explain it to people if they don't know what it is?
There was a who was it? Was it Harvard?
It was Harvard University.
Yeah, Harvard University did a study where they basically got a bunch of kids in. They sat them down in a room with nothing but a table and a marshmallow in front of them. And they said that they could leave the marshmallow there for a certain period of time. They'd give them two marshmallows. And they went back and left the room, left the kid there, and basically filmed what happened. And what they noticed is time and time again is that the kids got to a certain point where their will, their will cracked, their desire rose, and they started to like smell or touch or nibble the marshmallow. And then it was like game over. Like next minute the thing's gone, and there was very few that actually had the willpower.
It was
Or
like
the
3%.
Yeah, 3% had the willpower to leave it to basically get the greater reward. And this is exactly a demonstration of what happens when we're talking about wealth generation. Is so often, if we relate it back to business, it's like we start making a profit early on, so we rip that profit back out to go and buy a fancy car or a big TV or maybe even a property, rather than reinvesting that back into your business that's generating you cash and seeing it as a cash generating machine, the same as property. Got a question here from Greg from Sydney. If you guys are joining us live tonight, welcome. So grateful that you're here. Please do us a favor, hit like, let us know that you're watching, and also post your comments below, and we'll get them answered for you. Greg from Sydney, what are your top three, the top three bet for hottest property markets outside of Australia? I know what you're going to say here.
Okay, look, I only specialise in Australia.
Yeah.
Right. However, I will tell you what the top markets are anyway, because what I've done is I've looked at the whole world as a whole, and there's gainers, there's sustainers, and there's losers, and there's a lot of losers out there.
I'm going to say trainers, but okay.
Right, and the gainers, the countries that are gainers, the number one country is Australia. So you're in the right country. Well done.
Wow.
Awesome. And you look at COVID, for example, at the moment. There's a recession around the world. We've been hit hardly at all. And look at back 2008 as well. So Australia is actually very immune to the world problems because most of our wealth is created within Australia. A lot of people think mining is such a big deal, but it's only about 8 or 9% of our GDP. 70% of our GDP is small businesses in Australia servicing other people. So we're very self-sustaining, but also we've got a lot of immigration coming in. So because of that, Australia's going up in property. So other countries that are doing the same thing is New Zealand. New Zealand is very similar, and they're probably my second top country. Then Israel actually is growing.
What?
Yep, Israel's growing. It hasn't got a lot of land. Because it's all about demand-supply ratio.
Yeah.
And funny enough, Singapore is a great place to buy property. I mean, it's tiny. You can walk from one side to the other in an afternoon.
Yeah.
And that's the countries that are growing the most offhand. There might be one or two others, but they're the main countries that are growing offhand. So I'd say out of Australia, New Zealand, Israel, Singapore. And not in that order. I think it's New Zealand, Singapore, Israel.
Love that. And Matty Boy just commented here. It looks like you've got a fanboy. He said the 14-day challenge is awesome. I know you recently ran a 14-day challenge where you took people through and taught them aspects of your methodology and how to kind of get into the marketplace. And he's just commented here that was awesome. So maybe Rafi can put a comment or a link below for the 14-day challenge for anyone who wants to check that out for you as well. So George, let's speak about your proven methodology, because like what I love the most about it, there's a bunch of stuff, but what I love, it's not the most, what I love is that, you've gone and done this for yourself. You've stepped out, made a decision. Hey, like I've got an ability, I've got a gift, I've got a knowing, I've got a product here that I can help other people to achieve what I've achieved as well. Like if I can do it, I can help them do it, and I can help them do it a lot quicker, not having gone through what I've been through. Let's talk a little bit about your methodology. Like how have you replicated the same results you've got for yourself for many, many clients now all around Australia that are starting to profit through property?
Okay, so basically, I started off helping family and friends, helping them out. And I started sort of laying it out, and because what happened was people didn't understand what was happening. So I had to
Mm.
keep trying to educate people more and more. And as I did that, it became more of an education thing, you know.
Mm.
And I've helped, I've got over 2,000 people in our group and we're growing. So I've helped a lot of people in property
Yeah.
and I've got a lot of experience. And after helping so many people, I know exactly what they need.
Mm.
And I've made it into very small chunks. That's why, Matt, thank you very much for the shout out. But with the 14-day challenge, I decided to put in 21 modules and give people little steps.
That
So
would totally mess with my OCD, having 21 modules over 14 days. I'm just saying.
because we've got a pre-challenge, and
All
then
right. Is that 7 days?
no 5 days, and then
Oh,
you've
that would
got,
totally mess with my
wait,
OCD.
then you got 14 days, and then you got the work, you got the graduation webinar where I add the two last modules.
Okay. All right. It
But
works.
so what I did is I did it because of COVID and people were stuck at home, and I
Yeah.
wanted to give people something practical to do, and that
Yeah.
way you've got between 10 minutes to a couple of hours of homework each night, and you've got this little thing to do. But what happens at the end of the day, by the time you finish this, you've created a multi-million-dollar property portfolio game plan,
Yeah.
which is the first step after you invest in yourself, because then you've got a plan, and
Yeah.
this plan will serve you for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
forever. Because a lot of people don't realize what their goals are. They don't know how many assets they've got. They don't know what they need, what they want, how to get there.
No clarity.
And we just go through and give them that clarity.
Yeah. You know what though? Like I think the biggest turnoff though is it's boring. And this is what stops, I think, a lot of people doing it. Like it's the same with business.
Yep.
Like business does not have to be complex or challenging or difficult. A boring business is often a very profitable business.
Exactly. What you've done is very smart, and that's true. Because look, any strategy that's exciting is not a passive investment. It's not an investment strategy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A good investment strategy, Warren Buffett says this, has to be boring. You know,
Yeah. Well,
because
not emotional.
not emotional, yeah, because what happens is there's no ups and downs, it's just constant. Because with property, it's time in the market that matters. It takes time. So there's a lot of people out there talk about get rich quick schemes and you can buy a property for $1 and make 100,000 overnight and all this sort of stuff. But it's not sustainable. And the problem is there's a lot of skill involved to be able to do it anyway, if you can, and luck. And what I've done is I've created a program where you don't need the skill, you don't need the luck, you just need to do the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Aspects of that though too is that it does take time, yet it's okay if there's an aspect of certainty that's going to mature over time and it's going to fruit. I think a bigger issue is people go into the market uneducated. Like the first place that I bought, it seemed like it was a great place to buy. It seemed like a good area. Knew nothing about property. Didn't educate myself. Right, just went into the marketplace, and that property sat there for 6 or 7 years, and literally still worth the same amount of money as what it was when it was bought. Now, granted, it's been a good savings account in terms of a way. Like if I hadn't have bought it, the money wouldn't have been there. But I had no idea what I was doing versus other properties that I've purchased through you or noticed clients have purchased through you have increased in capital value in a very short period of time, like months, not years as well. And obviously we're talking property cycle clocks too. You don't know whether you're at 1 o'clock or 10 o'clock on the property cycle either.
Exactly. And basically, I suppose, with property doubles every 7, 10, 12 years. On the average, it averages around 7.2% per year, which is 10 years. But if you choose the right property, it's going to go quicker. So if you buy a $500,000 property, because property is a bit like the weather. The weatherman can tell you the average temperature of Adelaide in 5 years' time, but he can't tell you the exact temperature next week.
Mm.
Because the long term is more consistent. Funny enough,
Law of averages, right?
the law of averages. That's why I can't predict if a property is going to jump up 20 grand in the next month,
Yeah.
but I can predict if it's going to double in 7 or 10 years.
Yeah.
So if you buy a $500,000 property, in 10 years it's going to be worth $1 million, and you're going to make 500,000. Now, the average business or person can't save that much and have the discipline to do that.
Mm.
So a property is going to kick your ass, right, when it comes to earning money. And that's why I think whether you're self-employed, whether you're a business person, or whether you work for someone, some of the money you take, you need to invest in property. So then, because I really think, if you haven't replaced your income through property, that should be your number one goal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And look, especially because you deal with business people, and a lot of business people, they make a lot of money, but they don't know what
Have no money.
they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. But equally too, like business is not necessarily a wealth generating tool, right?
It's
Now,
a cash generating tool.
outside of obviously building a company and positioning yourself for acquisition or for sale, something like that, business is a good cash generating tool. But I think that you need a diversified portfolio. The money that you make in your business, sure, reinvest it back into marketing, reinvest it back into growth and resource and so forth. But there should be an aspect of that you're pulling off the table, putting into shares, into bonds, into property and so forth, depending on obviously your strategy. I'm not a financial advisor.
Yep.
I'm curious to know that too, George, like your opinion around like shares versus property. Like I know that you're all in on property. It served you very, very well and still continues to serve you well. I'd love to kind of get your viewpoint around shares versus property.
Okay, I'll give you my viewpoint. Now, with shares, right, what happens is each year they redo the index. So let's say, for example, if a company folds and disappears, it's gone the next year. They don't actually quantify it.
Yeah.
So you can imagine each year they get rid of all the shit shares, and when you look at the average shares, it's only for the ones that survived, not the ones that have died. Right? But with properties don't get wiped out very often. So you've got a more realistic figure. So when you look at the average growth of property, average growth of shares, the shares one is skewed. It's not real. I don't know how skewed it is because I'm not an expert in shares.
Yeah.
But I think it is skewed. And like I caught up for lunch with the Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort in Melbourne recently. And we were having lunch, and I asked him a few questions. I said, "Look, all the stuff that you did, would you do it again?" And he said, "Yes, I would." He goes, "Especially the drugs." No, I'm not sure. I shouldn't probably say that, but anyway. But then I said, "What about shares? Like, what is the story of shares? Like, how do you make money out of shares?" He goes, "George, you've got to be a big player." He said, "You can't. The mums and dads don't make money out of shares. They do it by luck. The big boys, they control it all. They know what's going on. They're the ones that make
Same
it."
with crypto, like
Yeah.
mass manipulation.
Exactly. And the problem is, if you're a small player, you can't compete with those billionaires. So you should really play a game that you can compete in. And with property, because it's individual, there's no one controlling the market.
Yeah.
So it's I think personally, because of that, it's safer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I mean, the saying, safe as
Shit.
houses. Safe as houses, safe as property. They say safe as houses. I've never heard anyone say safe as shares or safe as Bitcoin.
Oh, as volatile as Bitcoin. That's a whole nother subject.
Look, when everyone was asking me about Bitcoin, I said, look, put 1% or 0.5% of your money in it.
Yeah.
And if you
What did he afford to lose?
If you lose it and you're happy about losing it, do it, because it's a massive gamble.
Yeah.
Because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I chucked in a little bit of money, a very small percentage of my wealth, just chucked it in, and just for the hell of it. But it's not an investment strategy. It's more of a speculation. And I really think your main investment strategy shouldn't be speculation. It should be really planned out and proper. Because a lot of these people, when they invest, they're addicted to this really terrible drug called hopium. I know, I'm coming out of them today, aren't I?
Hey, dropping bombs. You love that.
And hopium it's not a good plan. Hope is not a good plan. You really need the plan to be able to do it. And the funny thing is, like, my view of property investing is similar to your view of business. See, what I admire about you, and that's why I've got you as my coach, is because you know the difference between labor and capital. Because, see, labor is when you work for $1. Capital is when the dollar works for you and makes you money while you sleep. And see, passive money you make money when you sleep, you make money when you're awake, you make money just whenever. Where labor, you've got to work for it. And I love the way that you help people create freedom from their business with getting them out of labor into capital. That's the mindset. So we've got the same mindset, just a slightly different vehicle. And I think both are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, as I said, like, not financial advisors, neither of us are.
No.
What I like, though, is that you've gone deep on one thing. Like, you've gone all in on property, you found a way to make it work, and you replicated that time and time again. And obviously you're in a very comfortable position now as well. And you've now diversified into teaching people to do the same thing. And there's other aspects that are wealth generating tools for you. I had a conversation on a live stream this morning with Mary, who's a coach around like branding, helping 7 and 8 figure businesses. And she was all around like personal branding, but helping people find out what their uniqueness is or what their one thing is, what's the problem that they've solved, and going like super deep on that. Right. And when we spoke about like, these gurus or people selling you overnight success, like, and being able to make money while you sleep. And I kind of called her forwards and said, well, I believe you can make money while you sleep, just not the time frame that people tell you can. And that's the biggest difference is everyone wants everything right now, and they're not prepared to show up consistently and diligently to work towards it. Now, I had a billionaire mentor for a while, really nice guy, not on social, owns a bunch of car yards across WA, Northern Territory, and so forth. And I used to go and sit in his office once a fortnight, and we'd chat like all things mindset and spirituality and quantum physics and relationships. And he's just a really, really cool guy. And he said something to me once that I thought was quite profound, and I put in the book under the goal section. And he said, Barry, he said, the goal should never be the variable. Like what you want should never be the variable. He said, what the variable is the amount of energy, effort, and attention you're willing to put in to attain that goal. And to me, there's a game changer because what I realized is that I was setting goals and I would get close to them and not achieve them. So I'd move the goalpost. And what was happening is unbeknownst to me, I was conditioning myself that like nearly was enough.
Yep.
Right. I wasn't seeing things through, and that pattern was playing out everywhere in my life. And once I realized that, I started to question, are my goals actually my goals? And Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he talks about that. Like, are your goals your goals? If they are your goals, are they important enough? And what are you willing to do to attain them? And I think that's the biggest thing right now. Like for the people watching this tonight, like look at what you're trying to achieve. Do you actually really want to achieve that? Or do you want to achieve the feeling that you perceive is going to give you? Yes. And if you identify that, how can you elicit or how can you achieve that feeling right now without having to have the car, the career, the money, the wife, the husband, the child, whatever that case is? Like, why wait to some point in the future to experience something you can have right now? That's and brilliant. Once we have that right now, you'll actually find it a lot easier to achieve your goals.
I think that's great. And look, a lot of times people want that fancy car just because someone else wants, and they're buying all this crap that they don't even want just to impress other people. It's just crazy. I totally agree. And I think, what you've said is so powerful because you really need to choose your pain in life.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get it anyway. And you might as well choose it because you're saying, okay, I want this goal. I choose the pain along that path.
What's that quote? Being wealthy is hard. Being broke is hard. Choose your hard.
Exactly. And, they say the long path and the short path, and they say, well, the long path's not so long and the short path's not so short.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think, but I really think I prefer the pain of discipline compared to the pain of regret.
Yeah.
Go.
No. I just want to state too, like, if there's anyone watching this, they're like, oh, these guys are all about money. Like, if you know me well enough or know George well enough, that's absolutely the complete opposite. No, I just know what money can do. Like, I know what having wealth can do in terms of the impact that I can make, in terms of the investments that I can create, in terms of the opportunities I can create for employees and so forth like that. And I think at the end of the day is people have this aversion to money, right? Because of maybe the way they've been brought up or because of the way they've seen people treat money in power and so forth. But I think money provides us a lot of freedom, right? It provides us freedom. And, what I see time and time again within our community, the game changers, is when clients move out of that place of scarcity where they've been for so long, like hustling, grinding, getting nowhere in their business, to where they start to, make more money than they can spend, have more time than they know what to do with, and create greater fulfillment. Every single time they switch up and it's like, how can I create a greater contribution?
Exactly. Totally.
How can I make a difference? How can I help others do the same thing? Palmy on the call the other day, it's like, how can I help other concreters succeed? How can I help my team retire in 15 years? Like every single time, once they move out of that place, it goes to contribution. So this is not about having shitloads of money to buy fancy things. Sure, like I like nice things, but this is about the impact that having money can create. Greg here from Sydney's got a question. He says, is George optimistic about investing in the construction business?
Okay. Look, I specialize in property only.
Yeah.
So I don't know about the construction business. Obviously there's going to be Look, I really think that no matter what industry you're in, even declining industry, there's still winners in that industry that are going to do well,
So true.
right? It's because a
So
lot of
true.
people go, "Oh, I'm going to do." I know one guy. He's a lawyer now. Wants to be a psychologist.
Wow,
And I said, wow, that's a massive change.
that's a huge
And
switch.
he said, well, psychology is going up 20% per year. I'm thinking, well, that's nothing. Who cares? Because all you got to do is be an excellent lawyer, and you don't have to worry about going up or down. But so I really think that any industry is worth investing if you're backing the right company and the right thing anyway.
And I think it comes back to, again, like investing first in your mindset. Like someone asked a question on the earlier live stream. They're like, "Oh, does Harmy believe his business is recession proof?" And he's like, "Well, no. Like, no business is really recession proof. And if you think that it is, like, you're not looking somewhere that's going to smack you in the back." That's the way that I said. If you have that belief that, like, oh, we're going to ride anything out, no bullshit. What I said is, I believe my mindset's recession proof. I believe that regardless of what life throws me, and I've had enough proof of that, I will find a way to move through that. I'll find a way to come out better for it. And I think that that's where we should be focusing, is how do we build this bulletproof mindset, heart set, connection with ourselves, connection with those around us, that regardless of the situation, we know we're going to be okay.
Yeah,
Then
well,
then we're not thrown by COVID. We're not thrown by, like, think about this right now. When have you not had enough? Like, and that's not just to you, George, that's everyone. Like, when have
yep,
we not had enough to survive? The reality is we have. That's why we're still here.
exactly, exactly. So we've always had it. I think what you're talking about is ego, really, because ego is what makes people get upset about recession or things downturning or anything else like that. Because really, at the end of the day, life is life. The journey is the journey, and I really believe the obstacle is the way. And as you go along your
Yeah.
path, you go to the obstacle,
That's the second time someone said that today during a
and
live stream.
and the obstacle becomes your path. And then
Yeah.
you get the next obstacle. And really, there's only one way of having no obstacles in life. That's being dead. So
Yeah.
obstacles, you should be grateful for obstacles, and every obstacle is the path forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Fall in love with the journey, not with the outcome, because the outcome never feels like you thought it would.
No, I mean it's a bit like Olympic athletes. They train all their lives to get the gold, and
Yeah.
they've got that brief moment of getting the gold. And it's amazing, and then they've got post gold, what do you call it, depression, and they really
Trauma.
do.
Yeah.
They really do, and it's terrible. And I find I know some athletes.
Yeah.
I used to date a girl that was quite
Here we go.
high up in sports, but I don't want to mention her name. But she was very good when she was younger, amazing, one of the
Yeah.
top tennis players in Australia. And then
Yeah.
what happened was, after that, she just was a bit depressed because nothing was really getting her excited
Yeah.
after being adored by all these people and thinking that she's amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I don't know. Like, it's been the hardest year a lot of people have ever had in life, and yet the interesting thing I find is that, it almost seems like as many people have had a tough and challenging year, there's as many, if not more, people that are like, you know what, this has been amazing. Like, I've had more time with my family, or I've changed my offering, my business, or I've moved away from a job I never enjoyed. And, neither are right and neither are wrong. It's just different perspectives and how people are choosing to see the situation. This is why, like, I'm just such a big believer around the inner game when it comes to growing businesses. Like, this is what we drill in time and time again, is that once you learn to master your inner game, like both your psychology and your mindset, but also I believe even more than I believe, like, connection to our heart, and to our heart, to God, to source, to energy, to whatever it is for you. It's
Yep.
like, that's when we're unstoppable. That's when we're living inspired. That's when we're living on purpose, regardless of the money, the time, and anything else. It's like, life, come at me, like, show me what's there, allow me to rise to challenge, because I think that we never get dished up anything we don't already have the capability to overcome.
And if you don't overcome it, you're going to get dished up again and again and again until you do overcome it. You know what I mean? Because if you ignore a problem, it's going to
Press
come
it
back.
down. Yeah,
It's going to come
absolutely.
back. And
Absolutely.
yeah. And look, let's go back to money not buying happiness. I
I've
think
never seen an unhappy person on a jet
no, no,
ski.
exactly. But look, I believe money can buy happiness. I really do. But that's because money can't buy happiness because some people don't know what to spend it on. And because what happens is, the foundation, as you said, is freedom,
Mm,
and you need money and time for that.
mm,
So if you've got money and no time, you still haven't got that freedom. But then, you see rich billionaires on 60 Minutes having interviews, all depressed. One guy sold a $500 million company. He was depressed because he had money, but he didn't have fulfilling relationships.
Yeah.
Because without fulfilling relationships, what's the point of having freedom and money? Because I really think that's one of the keys. And then health. You can go to any cancer ward and say, hey, how would you like a $10 million? And you probably get a bedpan thrown at you because they need health. That's what they need. They need, you know what I mean?
I,
So,
I, I think health's number one. Health's number one for me, and relationships number two. But it took me a long time to get that. Like, I separated from the mother of my kids when I went through bankruptcy 9 years ago. Around just that, because I was doing what I thought I needed to do as a provider of the family. She was doing what she thought she needed to do. We're both doing the same things. It was just one was speaking Chinese and one was speaking Italian. We're having the same experience, but what we weren't is we weren't aligned in our relationship. We weren't on the same page. We weren't moving towards common goals, and therefore there was a ton of conflict. We both felt abandoned and alone and not respected, not looked after. And I think that that is a tragedy that a lot of people face as well, and
yeah,
sometimes unfortunately have to face the pain or the challenge of the adversity to kind of have that awakening and realization. I think that in many ways we attract a lot of the adversities that we have to help us to grow and to become better versions of ourselves.
totally. I
Um,
think your biggest fear, a lot of times you create your biggest fear because you think about it all the time. That's what
yeah,
people do a lot. I've seen people
absolutely.
do that over and over again, because a lot of people, they're running away from something instead of going towards something.
Yeah, yeah. Mel Power here. Hey, Mel, how you doing? Go George. People
Well,
have an aversion to money, but the money provides freedom. We need to change our relationship to money and how we can make a difference in the money. Absolutely, Mel, you're amazing what you do and making a huge impact as well, Dylan. Tony here. In your thoughts, what kind of effect is COVID going to have on the price of property? Great question.
good question. And I'd like to answer that. So basically, what happens whenever there's a big economic downturn? So let's go back in history because history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it rhymes.
Yeah,
And I always look at history to try to work out what's going to happen in the future of property.
yeah.
I'm a bit of a nerd. I look at stats and things like that. So back in 1987, there was Black Monday. That's when the stock market had the biggest crash ever. It was so bad that people were jumping out of buildings, killing themselves because they were so upset about it. They talk about ego. You
Mm,
know what I mean? That's all ego. But that's what happened. And everyone said the property is dead. It's never going to go up again. And I
mm,
remember driving down Green Hill Road in Adelaide, and it was just for lease, for sale, for lease, the whole road, all the commercial properties. Because commercial dies when stuff like that happens completely. Because when companies go down, commercial goes down.
mm,
When companies go up, commercials go up. So the
mm,
stock market, commercial property, have got a little bit of a rhythm to each other.
mm.
So commercial property gets affected very strongly by these downturns. Then what happens, and this is the interesting thing, is there's always, because property averages that 7.2%. So if it dips, it wants to go back to the average. And if it goes above that average, it wants to go back down to the average. So what happens is then there's a massive rebound. And the 90s was one of the biggest booms in history of property. Then we had GFC 2008. And 2008 GFC, what happened was there was the GFC, property went down a little bit again. Then we had a massive rebound. Now, this is the problem. People that are speculators, they're like, okay, I'm going to wait on the sidelines and I'm going to dive in when I'm right. And they're waiting, waiting, waiting. They blink. Suddenly, properties have doubled. They've missed it again.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? The problem is, if you're waiting for that property boom, you're not going to get there. You need to be in the market. You need to have property to make money out of property.
yeah.
So, so me personally, I'm not concerned what's happening with property short term. I'm more concerned what's happening long term. That's what matters. So property in some areas may go down, right? That's the fact of it, and other properties will go up. And I guess one of the things I do to really hedge my bets is out of the 6,000 suburbs in Australia, out of the 6,000 markets, I'm only picking the top 100 in a certain state.
Mm,
So because I'm picking up top 100, I'm really hedging my bets that these are going to perform. And what I found is these top 100 suburbs, the ones that I had, because I had properties before I knew about this, and they actually went up during 2008, where my other properties didn't do so well. And there's my microphone went down. I hope you can still hear me.
yeah,
Yeah,
just.
that's okay.
Yeah,
Let me go a little bit closer. My
yeah.
head's going to be too big though. Anyway, so yeah, so when I think what I do is like it's a bit like have you heard the story about the grasshopper and the ant?
No.
Okay, so the ant, what does the ant do in summer? It works really hard and collects stuff and puts it down there. right? Because the ant in summer is thinking winter. That's what it's thinking.
Yeah.
And what does it think in winter? It's thinking about summer. And I'm a bit like the ant. When the property market's going down, I'm realizing it's going to go up again.
Yeah.
It's going up. I realize it's going to go down again.
Who is it that said, get greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy?
Warren Buffett said that.
Yeah.
And personally, I don't like the word fearful or greedy. Personally, I get what he's saying, but I think don't be greedy and don't be fearful. Be prepared and do that instead. But really, at the end of the day, when people get overexcited when property's going up, I don't get as excited. And when people get excited that they're going down, I don't get as excited because really, at the end of the day, they're going to come back to their normal.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, if you're thinking long term, you're not a speculator, and you've got a solid foundation, you've got the proper strategies, you should be constantly investing bit by bit in a safe way.
Yeah.
No matter what's happening, whether it's going up or down.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. So George, if people were wanting to connect with you, find out more about the amazing work that you do, what's the best place for them to find you at?
Well, if they're on Facebook, I've got a Facebook group where we've got over 3,000, thriving members of people that are interested in investing and things like that. And that's a Facebook group called Property Secrets.
Yeah.
That's probably the best place to find me.
Yeah.
Because in there, actually, I go live in there once a week anyway. So that way, I can talk to people and interact with them. And Facebook, I like Facebook. I like talking to people and interacting with people. It's part of the reason I started this business,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, love that. And look, if you want to stay up to date with all the amazing guests we're bringing on here onto the Freedom live stream series, I'll put a link below here. Click on it, register your details. We'll send you through reminders about what's coming up and also let you know about my book when it comes out officially on the 3rd of August. But we're doing a pre-release launch this Sunday with a bunch of bonuses. So make sure that you're tuning live on Sunday. There'll be one episode. I think it's 8 a.m. Perth time, 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Not sure what time that is in the States for those of you watching in America.
9:30 Adelaide time.
9:30 Adelaide time. But that's that. George, one question. Knowing what you know now, if you were to have a conversation with a 10-year-old version of you, what advice would you give him?
Look, great question. I'd say to my 10-year-old self, don't worry, it's going to be okay. Just go along your path and enjoy your challenges. Because I spent a lot of time with, like a lot of people, is when I got faced with a challenge, oh no, not another challenge.
Yeah.
Then you get another challenge, oh no. But now I embrace them and enjoy them. That's all.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I tell my 10-year-old self. Just enjoy the challenge, enjoy the journey. Don't worry about the destination.
Yeah, love that. Be curious to know, comment in the chat below. What was the biggest takeaway from tonight's live series? Please as well share it around, let other people know about the amazing stuff that we're doing here and the phenomenal guests we've got on board, like George. There's some amazing ones coming up over the next few weeks as well in the lead up to the launch of the book. That's it for us tonight. I appreciate you watching. We'll be live again in the next hour with another phenomenal guest. I'm really looking forward to having him on board. So if you're about the place, please jump on board. Otherwise, look forward to seeing the next one soon. George, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, everything you've shared, and look forward to keep the conversation going.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.